Okay, let's talk about ethics for just a few minutes. This is a very important topic that you'll probably get to cover in a few other classes throughout the curriculum here at Utah State. So, what I want to focus on for this discussion is not necessarily the entire breadth of the scope of ethics, but more so how can you become an ethical person while you're a student here at Utah State? And I think that's going to lead you into becoming an ethical person long term. So this is not intended to be an exhaustive discussion about ethics. Okay, so where I'd like to start this discussion is about personal ethics. Like, what are some of your personal ethics? What are some of those things you think of when you hear the word ethics? Um, there are a couple of examples here on the slides, but really what it comes down to is what kind of person do you want to be? What do you value as a member of society? And do you want to be that type of person? So when people think about you, what do they think about in terms of your ethical behavior? There are many books out there that talk about ethics, and you can dive into it and learn quite a bit and still find yourself struggling to make ethical decisions. And that's the tricky thing here is talking through a scenario is very different than living a scenario. So like what's hard to recreate in the classroom is the pressure that you feel and the intensity at which you maybe are being pushed to make a decision that is in the best interest of a company or a specific individual that maybe is not ethical. And so those types of situations, if you can put yourself, maybe think through, like, if I was in that scenario, what would I truly do? And so we're going to have a few scenarios that we'll talk about here, but it's really difficult for us to get to that point where you can feel what it's truly going to be like as an engineer making an ethical decision. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to focus on maybe just the thought process or maybe the philosophy around ethical decisions, more so than try to put you in a situation that's going to mimic real life. So first off, there are 5 cornerstones of ethical behavior. Do what you say you'll do. I can't even tell you how far ahead you'll be as a human and as an adult just by doing number 1. It's surprising how many people say they're going to do something and then they don't end up doing it. So just do what you say you're going to do. Never divulge information given to you in confidence. It doesn't take very long for people to figure out they cannot trust you. Accept responsibility for your mistakes. That's a really big one. We see it in politics all the time. They're always trying to push it off on somebody else. However, if you just accept responsibility for your mistakes, then a lot of people have a lot more compassion and a lot more tolerance for the outcome. Never becoming involved in a lie, as you know, it snowballs. Never accept gifts that compromise your ability to perform in the best interest of your organization. I always like to tell a story here about a company that I used to compete with. They would have trucks and snowmobiles show up in people's driveways, and somehow they ended up winning the work. It's pretty unethical. And of course, I mean, it is damaging for a lot of people, but that person who was accepting those gifts, obviously they did not keep their job for very long. Okay, so students' code of conduct here at Utah State, there's a lot of information out there. And I suspect this is probably not a high priority for many of you. I think it should be a high priority because these 4 to 5 years, yes, they are to gain technical understanding about scientific principles that you're going to use to solve practical problems, right? However, it's also a very important time for you to figure out how to deal with other people. It's a time for you to be able to broaden your perspective and determine what kind of person do you want to be as an adult. So right now is a perfect time for you to think through these scenarios. So hopefully you're not taking this lightly, that you are spending the time to figure out who you want to be. So academic integrity, honor pledge. So we have some great resources available to you. College of Engineering does provide some thoughts on academic integrity and professionalism. Now this link may be old, but there is some good scenarios there for you to think through. So let's dive in and try to put yourself into a situation where you're like, okay, I'm working on a group project. Is this ethical for me or not? And so really what you want is for everybody to contribute equally for the overall success of the project. And so a few ways that you can do that is to outline what it is the expectation is from the very beginning. That's one of the best ways to keep yourself out of an ethical pickle. And what I mean by that is where someone says, well, let's break up the assignment. You do this part, I'll do this part, and we won't look at each other's work. We won't talk about it. And so now it's like, do you all know how to do all parts of the project? Answer is probably no. So is that ethical? Well, maybe not in Professor Hume's class. Because I do think it's important for all students in the team to know all parts of the project. So let's give you a scenario here. You run into a friend in the library who's working on homework for your physics class. Your friend has already finished the first half of the assignment and offers to show you what they've done. This happens all the time, right? You only have an hour with your friend before you leave for your campus job. And so what should you do? Well, use the time to copy down what the friend has done. Take a picture of what they've done. That's the easiest, right? Just snap a picture of it. Then help your friend finish the remaining parts of the assignment. Later reference your friend's work as a guide for completing the first half of your assignment. And you do it on your own. Or C, start working through the assignment on your own and ask your friend for help. Now, obviously, we're going to want you to pick C, but think of this, like truly, what would you do in this scenario? Would you do B? That's really easy to do. So think through. Would you do B? Like truly, if no one was watching, which one would you choose? Here's another one. Calculus professor assigns the homework problems each week, and you encourage students to work together. You join, just like in this class, right? You join a study group, and the meeting, the group leader suggests that each member complete 2 of the problems and then share the answers with the group. Everyone thinks it's a good idea. What should you do? So go along with it. Complete 2 problems, share your work, copy the work of others, or B, complete the 2 problems, let your other members take a photo of your work and decide to complete the rest of the problems on your own. C, tell the group you do not want to share your work or copy their work, then tell the professor that the group of students are copying. Sneeches get steeches, right? D, tell the group it would be better if everyone completed the assignment on their own first and then met to discuss the results. So obviously we want you to pick D, right? But think through, what kind of person do you want to be? Now this is simple, right? It's just a homework problem. Why are we even talking about this? However, it is those decisions, those micro decisions that you make over time that kind of waterfall into who you become. So think about it. Is this the type of person that I want to be, the one who's cutting corners? Eventually it will catch up to you. And what I will say is that if you do the hard work, if you put in the work and you grind through it and you learn it for yourself, then one day there's an inflection point in your career and you understand how to do so much more than those who cut the corners. So there is a payoff, but it's going to be 10 years down the road. It's not going to be tomorrow. So sometimes it's a little bit harder for us to choose what is best for what is easiest. Okay, professional ethics. This is what we're really talking about here is once you're a professional engineer or you've graduated and you're working as an engineer, what are professional ethics? Well, there's standards of human behavior constructed by a profession. So in this case, American Society of Mechanical Engineers or American Society of Professional Engineers, there's all kinds of different societies out there saying this is what ethical engineers should be doing. And so this is sometimes defined by your employer, sometimes it's defined by your profession, or maybe even the public, or maybe just yourself. So this is where we have a canon that we can follow. So we're going to talk through that. Why do we care? Well, it helps us prevent from producing substandard work. So it helps us rise to a level that's going to be safe for everybody and is going to be financially viable. It's going to be all the things, right? It also helps individuals resist the pressure of allowing personal concerns like desires, greed, ideology, religion, politics to come into their design, right? Or override their professional ethics because they have, doctors, obviously, they have the Hippocratic Oath. That is something that they take very seriously. And in their schooling, they actually do that Hippocratic Oath as a group a few times throughout their education to make sure that everybody understands, that everybody knows that they are there to save lives. Okay, so for us, we have a code of ethics or maybe canons that we can follow. So in this class, we're going to use the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, and they, on their website, they have a whole bunch of information about ethical decisions or code of ethics. So this is like what you follow when something comes up as an engineer. So engineers have a direct and vital impact on the quality of life for all people. Therefore, engineers must adhere to the highest principles of ethical conduct. So ASME dictates these. So you can see we've got a few things here where we are essentially just trying to make sure that we are doing the very best for humankind and we're being honest with the information that we have because, again, not everybody understands the problems that we're solving at the same level we do. They're trusting us as the expert in order to understand and then disseminate those results in a way that's meaningful for humans, right? So we need to be the ones who are ethical. We don't want to fudge factor the numbers. We don't want to move the numbers. We don't want to change anything to the point where it is no longer reflecting the safe calculations or the safe outcomes that we're looking for. Increase the competence and prestige of the engineering profession. That's pretty important. So here are the canons. So these canons right here, if I were to test you on these, I would want to make sure that you at least had a grasp of what each of these canons means and what each of these canons, how you can apply them as a professional engineer. So back to how do you make a decision? Well, we've got a decision matrix. Now this applies to everything, right? We used it for the boat. So we generated a bunch of concepts. How did we make the decision on which concept was best? Well, we used a decision matrix. So you can do the same thing for an ethical situation. You can write down what's happening. What are all the different options that we have in a specific situation? And so if something is very challenging to split hairs between, maybe B or C, and you're like, I'm not exactly sure which one is going to be best. Well, you can write down the canons and you can see National Society for Professional Engineers canons or ASME canons. whichever canons are governing. Maybe it's your employer who has a code of ethics. And so you can write those canons down, and then you can say, here's option one, option two, and option three of how I react to a specific situation. And then you can just add them up and see how many are yeses, how many nos, and how many maybes. And this will hopefully help clarify for you which of the outcomes you should do or which of the options you should take. So here's an example. You're a mechanical engineer on a team designing a funicular for the city. Your team submits what you believe is the best design overall by all criteria, and the costs are within the city limits of what they originally set. However, some months later, the city undergoes budget crisis and cuts your funds. Your supervisor, also a qualified mechanical engineer, makes design changes to achieve the cost reduction that they believe are not to compromise the safety of the funicular. You're not so sure. However, you cannot conclusively demonstrate that it is now a safety hazard with the design changes. So you request a new safety analysis to be done. Your supervisor denies the request on the grounds of time and limited budget. What should you do? Go along with the decision, appeal to higher management, quit your job. So which of these do we do? So again, you can go back and you can plug these into your ethics decision matrix, and you could run through those and find out what the verdict is. So as you're going through, ask yourself, by going along with the decision, so this is the first option that we have, we go along with it, am I holding paramount the safety and health and welfare of the public? So what do you think? If you go along with a decision, are you holding paramount the safety of the public? So you go through each and every one of those and ask yourself, and then give an honest answer, yes, no, maybe. And again, this is something you're going to do on your own. It's going to be something that you probably won't share with somebody, but it will help clarify for you what is the most important piece to making this decision. So in this scenario, like I've run through this with several classes. The last class we came up with this. We got 5 yeses to appeal to higher management. We got no nos and 1 maybe. So this one won out. We should go with B. So it's pretty clear. Quitting your job probably doesn't do a lot for the outcome. So you can see we got 0 yeses, 3 nos, and 3 maybes. And then go along with the decision, we got 0 yeses, 6 nos, and 0 maybes. So obviously we're going to pick B in this case. Here's another scenario. You are testing motorcycle helmets manufactured by a variety of competitors. Your company has developed an inexpensive helmet with a liner that will withstand multiple impacts, but is less effective on the initial impact of your competitors. The vice president of sales is anxious to get the new helmet on the market and is threatening to fire you if you don't release it to the manufacturing division. What should you do? Follow the vice president's orders, and they will ultimately be responsible for the decision. Call the newspaper and blow the whistle on the unsafe company policies. Refuse to release the product as safe and take your chances on being fired. I'm not sure what happened to this slide, but there are several typos in this slide. Something happened. Or D, stall the vice president while you look for a new job at a different company. So again, you can use the decision matrix. You've got your options at the top there. You've got the ASME canons along the left-hand side, so you can go through and see which one works out. So this is what we did with one of the previous classes, and we found that refuse to release and risk losing your job was the best outcome if you followed the NSPE or the ASME canons. So the takeaway from this discussion is, number one, figure out who you want to be over the next few years and put yourself in situations where you can start exercising those muscles of ethical decisions, and take a minute, pause and think, what should I do? If I want to be an ethical person 3 years from now when I graduated, or 10 years from now as I'm a practicing engineer, what decision should I make today in order to exercise those muscles of being uncomfortable or being in a situation where there's maybe risk or something at stake that may cause you to lose favor with someone else? Think about those in those instances. What do you want to do? And then maybe if you're having a hard time, put together a decision matrix. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but the more you do it, the more it's going to be natural for you to do it in your head. So you might as well do a decision matrix.